Well, I forgot one of the announcements. We have a guest speaker today. Dr. Bob Deen is employed by the Center for Spiritual Living. His office is up in Genesee. He's in charge of professional education, is that right? So if you're a minister or an aspiring minister, he is in charge of overseeing the education for those folks. So we're very glad he's here today. We're delighted to see him. I apologize for just accepting that you were here and figuring everybody would know. Anyway, it's my pleasure to present Dr. Bob Deen.
Thank you. Well, it's good to be back. It's good to see all of you. Wow. What are those of you I can actually see? Actually, that's fine. Yeah, I figured you knew that I wasn't Julie. And those of you who know who I am, already kind of figured out what was happening. Plus, it's been on the website. I'm really glad to be here. And that was beautiful. Thank you. That was incredible. Between your singing and his speaking voice, I'm kind of in a trance up here. So, yeah, I suspect you might be too. But, trance is not a bad thing. Title today is Sweet Surrender, as you probably figured out by now. And for most of my life, surrender was anything but sweet. I don't know about you. I grew up with siblings and with cousins, by the number, and wrestling and arguing and fighting and disagreeing and being forced to surrender and say uncle was a regular thing, and not always sweet and not always much fun. And then I got into my former religious path, for which surrender was a grueling and awful thing. You had to surrender your life to some path that you knew was going to be horrible, because if it was fun, it couldn't be right. Or you had to surrender to doing what you were told by the church, regardless of how boring it was. The big shock came for me on that when I kept surrendering and going and showing up and doing, when I heard a minister once say, heaven is going to be like being in church for the rest of eternity. I thought, man, I am in the wrong business. Now, the kind of church he talked about, was sitting down, being quiet and behaving and not talking and not having your own mind or thoughts or beliefs or anything, just kind of following along. So that wasn't a surrender I wanted much to do with either. And then I got into this teaching. And oh my goodness, I discovered something brand new. Here's this idea that I don't have to surrender to anything, because I am the universe is all tied up right here in my own consciousness. That I get to be empowered to have my own life according to what I believe in and what I trust and what I want and what I desire. And I live in this universe that's just saying yes to all of it. I want loving relationships. Yes. I'm prosperous. Yes. On and on it goes. And it was such a rich and wonderful experience, and still is. And I never heard about surrender. And I liked that a lot, because it's like creating a world for myself and for those I love, and finding this great richness and, going places I never imagined up until then would even be possible. Remembering all those things I used to look at in the encyclopedia and in other books and magazines when I was a kid, and thinking what a gorgeous places those must be. Oh, but I can't ever go there. Because I have to surrender to this way of life that's all about poverty and sadness and giving everything up and suffering, all of that. Whereas in truth, I got into this teaching and discovered you can have it all. Or as Dr. Holmes says in the book, in the textbook, and all over the place, you can have as much as you can embody. Wow, that's cool. Now, by embody, he did not necessarily mean that you can physically feel, although that's part of embodiment. What he really meant was you can have as much of it as you can believe in and believe is yours to have, or to be, or to experience. So the job then becomes creating that belief system that's going to fully support that which you desire to have. You can want it all you want. My teacher used to say, we don't get what we want in this teaching. We get what we believe we deserve. Ouch. Or we get what we believe we can have. Or we get what we believe we are. So we have to grow into the becoming of that which we want, that which we desire. And that's when that ugly little word snuck in. Surrender. Which is actually a beautiful word. But at first it didn't feel like it. Because as the song said, and you kind of took all of my talk, but they say repetition is how we learn, so you get to hear it again verbally. I'm not going to sing it to you, don't worry. But that idea that what has to be surrendered are all those things in my consciousness that say I am not good enough. I can't have it. I don't deserve it. I'm too old. I just spent the weekend training advisors for teen camp. You guys are in for a great summer. Get these kids to camp, folks. They're going to have an amazing experience. And we could always use more advisors as well. Too late for this year. But anyway, I get sidetracked. Like I said, I'm old, okay? What was wonderful about this weekend was hanging out with advisors from all ages, with some 20-somethings who used to be in my family when they were 13 and 14, and now they're showing up after years of camp being advisors and stepping into these amazing lives, living the richness and desires and wealth. I heard from one of my kids this past week who now lives in Thailand, on an island off Thailand, one of those paradise kind of places, because he just got it. He could be and do and live anywhere he wants to. So he lives with a group of young adults who are living there for a while, and most of them are into this teaching. And when they get tired of that, they're going to move somewhere else in Southeast Asia for a while, and they're making their living on their cell phones. Because you can do that now if you know how and you know what to do. And they believe they deserve it. Why should we sit in an office and suffer when I can sit on the beach and make all the money I want right here with my finger and my phone and my noodle? We have to get the idea that we are it and we can have it and we can embody it. So I hang out with that bunch, and age has no meaning whatsoever. We're all just people, spiritual beings having a wonderful spiritual experience. So it's a surrendering those limiting beliefs, those limiting ideas. And what are you surrendering it to? You're surrendering it to that great sweet spirit within you, that is you, that greater you, that is there and never went away. It's not like you have to go get it. Spirit is not a commodity that you have to go out and get and trade it for something. I used to think you had to get salvation, you had to get spirit by trading everything you ever enjoyed doing. You know those religions. It's already there. You don't have to get spirit. You don't have to get more. You're as spiritual right now as you're ever going to be. You have as much divinity within you right now as you will ever have. The trick is we have to see it and find it and experience it and express it. We have to get that opportunity to surrender all of those things we know and think and believe about ourselves and the world that are unlike that are different. Things like surrendering fear. Oh, you've got to be kidding. Do you ever notice, do you ever pay attention? It's a real fascinating thing to go through a day with a little card in your pocket or your cell phone or your iPad or something, and just notice and jot down every time you feel fear. Every time a fearful feeling or thought or idea crosses your mind. You get an idea of how much do we live in fear. We live in a culture that is fear-mongering constantly. All these great commercials of people falling down and needing to buy all this equipment so when you fall down you can call somebody somewhere else to come get you up off the floor if you're over a certain age. Fear that there's a cell around any corner waiting to be activated and start doing mean things to Americans. Fear that if you don't vote for the right party that the whole thing is going down the tank. Fear that if we do vote for the right party, the whole thing's going down the tank. Fear that we're going to lose this, we're going to lose that the world is coming to an end, blah, 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 blah. You all know that. You hear it. You live with it. Get out on the highway, fear that somebody's going to hit you. Or for when I'm driving, most people are just afraid I'm going to hit them. So, we're all good. So, we're immersed in that stuff. And what we have to surrender is, let me back up. One of the things that does, it gives us a way to connect. Have you ever been to a party where everybody starts talking about their ailments? I was at the doctor last week, you won't believe, and this is wrong with my liver, and this is wrong with my gallbladder, and, it's an organ recital before it's all over. You just go on and on and on. Well, that's a way of bonding. It's a phony way of bonding, but it's a way of bonding. Or you've ever bonded around being mad at somebody else? Like in relationships? Let's get together and talk about old so-and-so. Or we'll each talk about our particular so-and-so. Great friends, coffee circles that are all built around let's talk about the wife. Or a pain in the neck. Or the husband and how unfeeling he is. Or whatever it might be. So we have this tendency as humans to find some way to connect and to experience our oneness. And we will do it around anything. Football. I don't get it. But thousands of people show up down there and fight traffic and eat bad food in order to be in one place to watch people do what they're going to do anyway. I don't get it. But we're doing it to connect, to bond. Our fear is one way we bond. So you have to be willing to surrender the risk. You have to surrender the risk of not being connected if you surrender your fear. Because you may not want to participate in the same conversations. Your friends might think you're a little goofy. Which is one of the reasons a spiritual community like this is so important, because then we find something else to bond around. We find the unity of spirit, the life of God is what we bond around, the life of spirit within us. So we don't lose anything with that kind of surrender. But it can feel risky. One of the real challenges for people of spiritual growth is every time you grow and you move into a kind of another level of consciousness and you break out of the old circle of thinking and you surrender that limited idea that I'm not all, that I can't have it or I can't be it or I can't do it or that God really does care about me or I care about the world as God through God, then we lose our friends. Because folks who no longer see things that way don't work together the same way. And it's a real challenge of spiritual growth and the spiritual path that oftentimes we leave folks behind. Or we just go off in different directions. So one of the things we are surrendering sometimes is comfort in a world that is built on duality and separation and fear. And we may become uncomfortable in the truth of who we are until we find those other folks to be comfortable with. So we surrender our comfort zone in order to be uncomfortable. We surrender our fear in order to have faith. We surrender the belief in duality, us and them. Those people. You know those people? Not anyone in this room, of course. But you know those people. Those folks that practice the religion I used to do, those people. And I can make up those people about them all I want to, but the truth is they taught me how to love. And they taught me that I was more than I thought I could be. And they taught me that hurt and harm was not the way of life for God, and therefore wasn't for me. And then I changed. I outgrew it. And they're still teaching that to each other, and it's wonderful for them. Or I can make them that all those bad, they just don't get it. We here, as science and mind people, we are the enlightened ones. We got it. And we do for ourselves, because if you don't have it here for yourself, go somewhere else and find it. Julie will kill me for saying that. My teacher used to say, I'm in this teaching because to me right now, and up until now, it is the best thing going on the planet for understanding how spirit works, how life works, and how I fit into it. And as long as that's true, I will be right here. And that's my truth too. And I invite that for you. But if the day ever comes when something else looks more appealing, you want to go to the Baptist church, the Presbyterian church, you want to go to Buddhism or wherever, you can still come here and be loved and accepted. Holmes didn't want this to be a church to start with. In fact, he always insisted it meet in the afternoons on Sundays. If anything met on Sunday, it had to be in the afternoon. So folks could go to their churches of origin or where they grew up or whatever, and then come and add to that and augment it and see the greater, bigger picture. It didn't change because leaders changed it. It changed because people got tired of waiting until the afternoon to go to church because they didn't want to go to their other churches anymore. So it shifted. Oh, why I said all that. The idea, though, is what we surrender is all of those things which no longer serve us. We're not surrendering our good. We're not surrendering the joyful things that bring life and light to us at all. We're surrendering those things that don't serve us, that do us harm. We're surrendering those habits in order to have a life of greater adventure. We're surrendering those things that keep us limited. No, sometimes you have to surrender carbs, and sometimes you have to surrender a lot of chocolate. Just have a little bit. But that's only in order to have greater health and to treat your body as the loving, amazing temple that it is. This is what you walk around in life with. You don't need it, by the way. You can just cast it aside and go on and do something else. But you can't do it here. And you can't touch, taste, feel, smell, and do all those wonderful things that our bodies allow us to do. So sometimes we have to surrender, treating it as if it were the eternal part of us instead of our spirit. And therefore caring for it in the timely way. Another thing the word's not coming. Another thing that we get to surrender are those things we have just let become habitual and accommodating and settling for because we forget that we could do more or be more. And we even trick ourselves into not knowing. We go, well, it was just God's will. I guess it's just God's will. I'm going to always be sick. Or I'm always going to be fat. Or I'm always going to be a slob. I'm walking around with stains on my t-shirt. I had to work that in somewhere. Spirit has a great sense of humor. My talk topic was surrender, and I'm thinking about it driving down and thinking surrender. Okay, what are the other parts of it besides what I've already planned? And I'm eating this wonderful wrap, and it was so juicy and it was so good. And it wasn't until I pulled into the parking lot that I realized about half of that juice was all over the front of my shirt. And so I thought about being late and running down to the store and buying a new shirt. And then I thought, well, I'll just surrender my vanity. Okay, I can be messy. Life is messy, so am I. And if you get bored with what I'm saying, you have a Rorschach thing to look at and try to figure out what the spiritual meaning of it is. Okay. Surrender. Take life lightly, because what you're surrendering to is so much greater and more powerful and more wonderful than what you're giving up. I go back to one of the problems with the way that light is, it's a wonderful light, I'm glad I'm in it, is I can't see the clock, so y'all are in trouble. So anyway, I'm about done. In the little town I grew up in, it's in North Florida, it's Dixie County, which is scary by itself. And speaking of surrender, when you surrender was a bad thing, people in that county still don't believe that Robert E. Lee really surrendered to the North, that the war of northern aggression is really still going on and they're winning. So they can't imagine why I ever left that county, because everybody knows everybody. And everybody knows everybody's business, and everybody's related to everybody, and if they're not, they will be by the next generation. I mean, it's just this amazing old southern little closed up part of the world. And I surrendered all of that in order to have an education, in order to get out in the world and see what was there. And I have given up nothing that was less than, or that was greater than, what I have found. I have family now all over the world. I can go almost anywhere and find teens that are now grown up, that are glad to see me, It's amazing where I run into them. Ran into somebody in the Denver airport the other day that was in my teen group back in the 90s. I'm like, but is now a businessman traveling, and we had a great time together in the airport. You know, you give up the smallness for the greater. And what you surrender to is that power of spirit to bring you the greater. And it might be the greater of staying right where you are and going deeper and richer and being more loving and expanding that. I'm not suggesting the only way to have more is to run off somewhere. That was my path. But I'm suggesting that the smallness is what we surrender, and we surrender to the greater life, the greater good. I'll leave you with a story. I grew up on the beach, near the beach. If it keeps raining, the beach is going to be right out there, just down off the mountains and in the plains. We'll have the ocean back that used to be there. Yeah. It's a story of a swimmer who was swimming out past the waves, got out past his depth and past where he could really handle it, and got tired and exhausted and was being batted around, started to drift in a little bit, but then the current was pulling him out, and the more he fought, the more he had trouble, and he's popping up and screaming and yelling and waving his arms for help. He goes down, takes on a little water and comes back up, yelling and screaming, and nobody sees him. The lifeguards aren't paying attention. They're busy with other things. And finally, on the third time, he just sinks. And he says, well, in his mind, I guess this is it. I can't fight anymore. I can't struggle anymore. Just can't do it. So he quits fighting, relaxes. And as we all would know what happened, when his muscles relax and his body quits fighting, his natural buoyancy brings him to the surface, and he breathes until the waves carry him in far enough that he can stand up. That's what surrender's about. It's discontinuing our fight against life, our struggle against life being what life is, and trying to make it something else. And when we do that, life will carry us. Spirit within us will carry us into the safety of a greater and greater life than we ever imagined. It's for you. You deserve it. And so do I. And so it is. Thank you.